Hey everyone, Zephyr here. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are building what I'm gonna call a Sim York City starter. There is a slight problem with this though. It's just the fact that this build isn't a starter. No. Before you get out your pitchforks, hear me out. I have a reason for this. I went into this build with a vision. What I wanted to do was have a 3-story building and have the top floor and third floor be vacant, and the middle floor was going to be a fully decorated space for my sim, like an apartment. Except it wasn't going to be an apartment lot. And the goal was to make this build a starter home. Now, you are fully capable of making apartment lots in The Sims 2, but I just thought this was going to be a neat little idea. You know, kind of like simulating the experience of having an apartment, but not having to pay rent. And maybe just pretending your sim kind of bought their space and are living there, because I think that's something they do in New York City. I might be wrong, but like sometimes when I'm watching New York City apartment tours, they act like they own the space, and the way they talk about finances, it makes it seem like they own the space. And here we call that like owning a condo, but like in New York, it seems like they act like it's owning an apartment. Which I guess in some spots might be interchangeable. I don't know. Too lazy to Google it. But that was the vision I was going for this build. I was going for the classic fire escape look on the outside of the building, which I thought was a fun idea. It was hard to execute in The Sims 2, but I did it. And when I was building this, up until like the very end, I was trying to keep the starter sim budget in mind, because I wanted a starter sim to be able to afford the slot. They can. It's a little bit too expensive, which is why we are changing things up and gonna be doing something different with this build. So basically in this video, you get the exterior of this build and one apartment. But there's gonna be follow-up videos, maybe just one video, maybe two, of the other 2 apartments. That's the vibe we're gonna go for. We're gonna make it a fully functional apartment building in The Sims 2. So I think in the next video I'll definitely be changing the outside of this build a little bit, because I'm not 100% happy with it, because like once again I was working with a budget and I felt like I couldn't decorate the outside as much as I wanted to. But now, since I'm making this lot into an apartment, I have like free reign to do whatever I want on the outside of this building. So I'm looking forward to that. That's why the thumbnail of this video is the interior of the build. Because I'm not particularly happy with the outside. Like, it's not too bad, but it could be better, you know? Like, it wasn't 100% meeting my vision. Oh, another little housekeeping note. I think during my last video, I was like, yeah, the next video is gonna be kind of long. This isn't that video, if you can't tell. 10 minutes or so isn't a particularly long video. In fact, I think most people who give YouTube advice nowadays kind of recommend longer videos and not these quick little 10-minute bangers. But I think having a nice little 10-minute video here and there is fine. Sometimes you don't want to commit to watching an hour-long video, and sometimes you don't want to commit to editing your hour-long video. And that's just the way it is sometimes. That longer video is coming out eventually, but I shouldn't give you guys the time frame because I can't really stick to my own made up schedule in my head. Like, I don't even really have a schedule in my head, honestly. One day I will be one of those like professional YouTubers who have their life together and track everything on Notion and know what they're gonna upload like a month out, but today is not that day. It's not. I wanted to talk a bit about the sim I had in mind for this apartment. I imagine that this sim, like, I don't have a concrete vision of them in my head, but I have the vibes kind of sorted out, okay? I imagine that the sim doesn't spend a lot of time in their apartment. That's because they're young, they're enjoying New York City as much as you can enjoy it. Just like any other place out there, New York has its problems, and I'm sure this sim will tell you that. But they moved here for a reason. But they kind of just use their apartment as a space to sleep and, you know, maybe spend a couple cozy nights in here and there, especially if they're sick. But they don't view the apartment as like somewhere where they have to be all the time. And I think this is partially because their neighbors are a bit annoying. I think we're gonna have some noisy neighbors that might get on the Sims' nerves. So if you have any ideas for neighbors for the sim, let me know, because like I said, I am going to be building the other apartments soon. And I keep using Sim York City and New York City interchangeably. You know what I'm doing though, like you get it. But I imagine that this is the Sims like kind of first apartment out of college. A lot of their furniture is kind of like thrown together. It's not exactly matching. But you know, they furnished the apartment with items they found on Social Bunny Marketplace. So not all of the furniture kind of looks like it belongs together, but the apartment is functional. Okay, functional is a strong word. I did playtest this a little bit and it's not entirely functional. But before you get your pitchforks out again, I swear to you I will fix this when the build actually gets released. The main problem in this little apartment is the fact that Sims cannot cook in the kitchen, and honestly, I think that's realistic for New York City apartments. If you ever watch a New York City apartment tour, the majority of New York kitchens are incredibly small and look like a pain in the butt to cook in. But of course, Sims need functional kitchens in order to survive, so I will be fixing that for you guys before I put this build up on Patreon. The main problem with the kitchen is the fact that the sim doesn't have counter space to prep their meals, and like I said, that's realistic when it comes to New York City apartments, but it's not realistic in the Sims because Sims need counter space more than humans do. I mean humans can like knock things around and like make do with little counter space, but Sims cannot. Sims just get overwhelmed. They place the food on the floor and scream at the camera until you fix their issue. Which is how I wish things worked in real life, but I guess it doesn't really work like that. Oh, I have a little story to tell you guys. A story that involves stubbornness. Maybe we can learn a little lesson here. But I was at work yesterday, okay? And I was looking out the drive-through window. I work in fast food. And I saw this... Okay, I'm not super obsessed with bugs. I cannot identify a bug just looking at it. I was calling it a centipede in my head because it looked like a centipede. It was like this long, worm-like creature with lots of legs, kind of like scurrying about drive-through. And the thing is about our drive-through is that the pavement is there, and then there's a big ledge in between the grass and the pavement. So like the pavement is kind of like on a lower level than the grass. So the centipede had to like fall down onto the pavement in order to even reach it. And I felt bad for it because like it could not reach the grass. It was just like going around looking confused on the pavement and drive-through. And I was worried it was going to get ran over. So, but I'm like scared of bugs. So I didn't want to be the one who had to rescue it. And none of my coworkers who were there when I first noticed it wanted to deal with it either, right? So I'm like watching it for a good hour until my other coworker gets on the floor and I convince her to go and get it. So she went, used a piece of paper, whatever it was, to pick it up and put it back in the grass, right? Not 20 minutes later did I see the very same bug back on the drive-through pavement. And I was sitting there thinking, like, what are you doing, buddy? We just saved you. And the coworker who saved it was like, well, I hope it gets run over. Like, it's not appreciating our efforts, right? And I still felt bad for it, but I kind of let it go, let it, like, roam around drive-through for a bit more. And until eventually I couldn't handle it. I got kind of attached to this centipede. I was like, I don't want to see a car run over it. Throughout the whole encounter, there was a couple close calls. Our drive-thru was fairly busy, right? So anyways, I made my coworker again because I wasn't dealing with the bug personally, but I made my coworker go out and we brought the centipede further into the field because there's kind of like a field next to my work where there's like a little river and grass, right? Which sounds crazy, like a fast food restaurant next to like a little river and a field, but like that's the only way I can describe it. It's what it is. And we put the centipede there. And then I was watching for the rest of the night and there was no more centipede. So I think the centipede learned its lesson, accepted defeat, and scurried off to a safer location. I just don't know why I was so stubborn that I decided to fall back onto the pavement again. Like, sometimes stubbornness gets you in trouble. And I very well could have let that centipede learn its lesson and get ran over, but I gave it a second chance. So I expect an essay in the comments about what you learned about that story, because I feel like it's important and there's various life lessons that can be learned from it. It's due Wednesday, and if I don't get it by midnight, you will flunk the class. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. This isn't like a university class or anything. This is a sim speed build, but I feel like there's lessons to be learned in that story. But anyway, we are getting towards the end of the build now. Like I said, this build is not available on Patreon yet, but it will be for free eventually. If you would like to check out my other builds, they are available on my Patreon. If you guys liked the video, please give it a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye guys.